Welcome to another Phenomenal Tips video, real estate edition. As you know, I'm studying for my real estate exam. I'm taking it this upcoming weekend. So I'm going over some note cards that I've created. And these are all related to real estate law. So as you look at them, you'll see that most of them have this similar format, where the first one says seller disclosure form. And then we see the top required for single family homes, which is primarily what seller disclosure forms are used for. Essentially, of course, I'll be reporting the material, facts, and the physical condition of the property when I'm doing this seller disclosure form, but that's a lot more detail. For me, as long as I know the quick, clear cut definition, I'm good to go and I feel confident in this term and I'll move on. So as I go through, you'll just see me saying kind of that first portion, such as required for single family homes. Here, settlement fee, expenses for escrow and loan use, recording fee, cost to document ownership, so cost to show that, you know, I own the property. Title insurance, it's going to be protection. Lender fees, going to be those loan expenses. Tax certificate, it's going to be taxes due at closing. When should you schedule closings? Primarily early in the morning if the buyer is looking to move in that day, and typically not at the end of the month because that's when closings are most frequent, which is what this says here, closing early in the morning, try not to close at the end of the month. That's when that's the title company's peak time. Termination option, essentially, it's paragraph 23 in 1 to 4 family residential contract. Just gives the buyer the option to get out of the contract during the option period. When can the buyer terminate the sales contract? So these are the paragraphs that have, you know, buyer-related contingencies that a buyer can utilize if they want to end the contract without being penalized. So that's located paragraph 6, title and survey policy. Paragraph 7, the property conditions. So basically the title and survey policy, there's a stipulation in paragraph 6 where the seller must provide the buyer with the title insurance, well, not the title insurance rather, but they need to provide the buyer with the survey. And if it's not provided within an amount of time period, the buyer has the opportunity to, you know, back out of the contract. Property condition, if when closing time comes, if the property isn't in the condition that it was when the buyer saw the property, I mean, the buyer doesn't have to purchase this property because it's not what they were expecting to buy. It's not in the same condition. Paragraph 9 has stipulations that if the property is enclosed on a date that's notated on the contract, then the buyer or the seller can withdraw. If there's any losses, casualty losses, paragraph 14. So if there's a tornado that hits the property or hurricane wreaks havoc to this property and now it's damaged, before the property closes on and the buyer's obtained ownership, then the buyer can withdraw their contract because, again, very similar to paragraph 7, this property's not in the condition that it was when they saw it initially. And then paragraph 15, where just if the seller defaults, fails to, no longer wants to, you know, sell the property or what have you, just depends on the situation. That's another time in which the buyer can terminate the sales contract. So whose address should be listed in paragraph 21, notices? Okay, that's gonna be the buyer and seller, the client's information. Buyer and seller temporary leases is leasing before and after closing. Title policy and survey, again, is protection, it's paragraph 6. And as I was saying earlier, you know, box 6C, you have the seller has to have an existing survey, and the T-47 affidavit must be provided to the buyer and title company if the seller isn't paying for a new survey, if they're using an existing survey. Closing timeline refers to paragraph 9. The owner before phrasing gives you the option of closing on the property earlier. So you don't have to close on that exact date. You can close earlier, but you don't want to miss the closing date. Otherwise, you would have defaulted. So the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform Act limits risky lending, ultimately. Offers and commissions. Basically, offers can be countered and accepted in any order. Doesn't matter what order you accept the offers. Just make sure as an agent you are providing all the offers to your seller or buyer, rather your seller. Special agents, basically real estate agents, they have to complete specific duties. 4 things real estate agents should remember to improve the accuracy of contracts. Okay, it's gonna make sure you're not leaving any blanks. Make sure you double check all the check boxes. Strive to be early in closing. If you can close early, go ahead and close. You don't want to engage in any unauthorized practice of law, nor do you want to misspell anything. Make sure you're double checking the spelling, the name spellings of all the parties involved. Watch the statutes of fraud. Important. Requires all real estate contracts to be in writing. So any contract that's used for the sale or transfer of debts or goods greater than $500 or real estate must be in writing, and leases greater than 1 year must also be in writing. So it's just used to, the statute of frauds is used to reduce fraud and ensure transaction and agreements are enforceable. Power of attorney, acting on behalf of principal. Non-durable power of attorney, is that immediate? So basically, in a non-durable power of attorney, it takes effect immediately when the principal needs a specific action completed. Durable power of attorney, once incompetent. So basically, this power of attorney goes into effect when the principal becomes mentally ill or physically incompetent, unable to act on their own behalf. Springing power of attorney, so that's determined and incapacitated. Basically, when the authorizing agent can only make a decision for the principal once the doctor has a consensus that there's been a determination that the principal is incapacitated. Promissory estoppel or detrimental reliance, essentially you must do what you promised to do. You must complete services. Should the seller rescind the contract or forfeit the contract? Well, if they should opt to forfeit the contract, because if they rescind it, then all the earnest money or option money must be returned to the buyer. How are offers rejected? So the seller can actively reject the offer. The seller has a time frame to accept the offer. If the buyer is interested in another property and hasn't heard back from the seller about the original offer, then that buyer can retract their offer as well. Estate for years has an end date. Lease agreement with a specific start and end date. Periodic estates, automatically renewals, auto renewal, earnest money. It's that it lets you know it's a legitimate offer. It's the money that the buyer offers is just to reserve the property while the contracts are being produced. What happens if an eviction was started and a tenant files for bankruptcy? So Section 362 of the Bankruptcy Code states an eviction can't continue after filing for a bankruptcy typically, unless the unexpired lease can be assumed. And exclusive right to sell versus exclusive agency listing. Exclusive right to sell, basically the seller's guaranteed commission, whereas an exclusive agency listing, the seller can also sell this property and the real estate agent has to be the procuring cause for the property being sold. Effective date, agreement date, it's essentially the day all the parties agree to all the terms of the contract. What are the 5 essential elements of a contract? Mutual agreement, legal competent legally competent, lawful object, consideration, and adhere to the statute of frauds. Home warranty, paragraph 7H, essentially a residential service contract is an optional agreement that can protect the homeowner. As a real estate agent, you know, you can offer this as a complimentary service that you provide your clients. And this has an added protection for you as well, because, you know, if the homeowner experiences any unexpected repairs or any things that they weren't expecting, such as, you know, the air conditioner going out or having to replace some major appliance like a stove or a refrigerator or anything like that, or a roof, if there's a leak in a roof or something along those lines, anything like that, you know, these are essentially some of the things that the residential service contract can offer to your clients and add an extra layer of protection. So standard of practice, home inspector service requirements. What is a general inspector expected to do? So test or fix, install equipment, inspect the systems that are accessible, complete the inspection using the TREC promulgated inspection forms, and follow the minimum service requirements in the TREC standard of practice. Home inspections. That's basically an assessment. Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act. No kickback and disclose fees regulation X. What's included in the loan estimate form? The loan terms, projected payments, closing costs, cost of tax and insurance, and loan officer info. What's in the loan approval process? Researching which loans are good to use. Then you're gonna get that pre-approval. Gonna submit a loan application. Then after that, the loan will be processed. They go through underwriting to examine if you're eligible, if you should be approved, and if you followed all the steps, you know, the guidelines, you have a good debt to income ratio, pretty low. You put down a pretty good down payment, you know, you'll most likely be approved for that loan, and then at that point, you'll close on it. Title commitment is a report, basically a report outlining the current condition of the title. And yeah, these are just a couple of terms that are related to real estate law that you guys should familiarize yourself with so that you can go out and pass our real estate exam as soon as possible. So wishing everyone luck who's studying, praying for your success as well. Take care. Thanks for stopping by for another Phenomenal Tips video.